The life of a sports reporter is not for the faint of heart. Many dedicate their entire careers, their entire lives, to the pursuit of a story worthy of being told. The stories themselves are appreciated by millions, but the storytellers, not so much. Who are they? What is their story? What have they learned from this crazy adventure? It's the storytellers that always have the neatest stories. Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Storyteller Stories. I'm Haley Kate Webb, and I'm joined here today by a fellow Harding student and classmate of mine, Jackson Duncan. Jackson is a senior broadcast journalism major at Harding, and he's involved in various things at Harding, including various jobs for HU16 Live at 5, the Harding KVHU radio station, Harding Sports Network, and he even has his own podcast, The Sports Tea with JD, but we'll get to that later. Jackson, thank you so much for joining me.
Haley Kate, it is kind of strange being on this end of the interview, but I appreciate you having me on, and I'm excited to see how this goes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I just want to start by asking why you decided to pursue a career in sports broadcasting and then in your education and career for that.
Yes, so it started back in ninth grade at my high school in Nashville, Tennessee, Lipscomb Academy. And so I kind of always, I've grown up huge sports fan. There's two professional teams in Nashville. Well, actually, now there's three now that the Major League Soccer team has come to town. And my uncle is the athletic director at Lipscomb University. My cousins, I think four of my cousins play college sports at some level with one volleyball at Lipscomb University, one Samford women's basketball, one Freed Hardeman basketball, which is NAIA, and then another is playing D2 NCAA basketball at Trevecca. So lots of sports involved in my family. And so ninth grade just so happened I remembered that somebody was recording the basketball games at our high school. But then I was like, you know what? What if we had someone maybe do the play by play like any television, ESPN, CBS, how they do have like Al Michaels or Bob Costas or you name it, they have someone doing the play by play. And so I'm like, maybe they'll let me be that guy. So I kind of talked to some people, pulled some strings, and they let my 14-year-old self sit in the corner of our gym and commentate varsity girls and varsity boys basketball games as a 14-year-old. Like I'm just commentating solo. And then I maybe only commentated one game solo. And then my cousin, who's actually my age, he's 21 at Lipscomb University right now. And so we've grown up together, next door neighbors, same high school, and played on the tennis team together. But he was my co commentator. And the two of us were just kind of like, uh, I mean, Robin and you name the duo, like we really can egg each other on. And so that was really fun commentating games with him. He stepped down kind of from doing that in 10th, 11th, and 12th grade. But throughout those 3 years, we kind of had other people join me, but I was pretty consistently commentating our basketball games those years. And so that's a long-winded answer to tell you that basketball games at my high school, ninth through 12th grade, really got me excited to pursue broadcasting, and that's what I chose at Harding.
Okay, yeah, that's awesome. Well, you talked about your uncle being the athletic director at Lipscomb. You're from Nashville. I mean, there are all sorts of different universities and pro teams there. So why come to Searcy, Arkansas to Harding to study this instead of staying at home in Tennessee somewhere?
Great question, Haley Kate. So it all started junior year, and there was this camp that Harding was going to put on called like a media symposium. And they have a couple summer camps called Honor Symposium, which is more Bible and maybe some history and English courses. But I was not as interested in that. But I signed up for this media symposium and it got canceled. So I wasn't going to do it, but my mom pushed me to do the regular Honor Symposium in summer of 2016 in the maybe July 1st through July 15th. I went to the Harding 2 week honor symposium, loved it, met, I'm a senior right now off campus, but two of the three guys I live with, I met at that summer camp and I lived with them freshman year, sophomore year, met a ton of great people. And that really just opened my eyes to the community at Harding, the people of Harding, and that maybe being in the middle of nowhere, Arkansas was not as bad as I would have thought. Because growing up in Nashville, I mean, people would kind of be confused, like, why would you want to go to this small town in Arkansas, but these past 4 years have been the best of my life, and I regret nothing about coming here. I'm super excited that I came here, and the media experience has been even better than I would have expected. So that's been a big bonus.
Yeah, we're glad that you're at Harding. I want to talk about that media experience, though. I mentioned earlier you're part of the HU16 Live at 5, the news, various jobs there, Harding Sports Network, the radio station. So, can you talk to me about some of the opportunities you've had at Harding and what you've learned through those and what your favorites are?
Yeah, I mean, Harding really has a plethora of options that you can choose from with the newspaper, with the yearbook, with the radio station, with the HU16 Live at 5 News, with the Harding Sports Network. And I kind of have chosen three of those five I just mentioned. I've never really worked for the yearbook or newspaper, which are more the writing things, but anything with the microphone, anything with a camera, I've probably done something in that realm at Harding. And so I started freshman year more just kind of testing the waters, and I did some radio stuff. And I freshman year in the spring worked a lot on the radio station, got a paid position there, worked maybe 8 hours a week, and that was super fun. I was really kind of enjoying the alter ego of DJ Duncan I created. And I still have that on the radio. So that's kind of fun to keep that kind of radio DJ name. But then I think I got scared freshman year of the TV because all the people there looked so professional, so old, so like they had it all together. And now as a senior, being one of those people, I feel like, maybe they didn't all have it together and they just were intimidating because they were 3 years older than me or something. But I kind of got out of that phase sophomore year. I went for it and I auditioned to be the sports anchor in the fall of 2018. I was the sports anchor. And then spring of 2019, my sophomore year, I studied abroad and actually recorded 5 packages in Europe and sent them back. And they recorded and they were put on the HU News. And so then junior year, I worked some as a news anchor. And last fall, actually, I worked Monday through Friday, both weeks. And so I was on camera 8 of every 10 weekdays in 2 weeks. And then I was assistant producing those 2 days I wasn't on camera, and I was doing assistant producing, weather, news anchor. So I kind of last fall was busy all afternoons and really kind of tested the waters on a lot of stuff. And I'm going to say, you asked for a favorite. If I had to say my favorite on camera position for HU16 News, I would have to give it up for weather because it is no script, ad lib. You can kind of throw in some personality. And then I really secretly have enjoyed since freshman year doing the radio. And I think the radio allows you to kind of express yourself through ad lib again, and you can kind of more do things that may not be on a teleprompter. And so that's been fun. And one thing I haven't touched on is what you have been a lot of a part of, and that is the Harding Sports Network with Tim Hamilton and Mark Pryor helping out, and some of those people, Billy Morgan, who you've both of us know through Harding. And so that's been super fun. Is being at these games. I love the sideline reporting. I've done Midnight Madness, homecoming football, the basketball season opener, and I've also been really fortunate to have Tim Hamilton give me the opportunity to commentate three different sports, maybe even four if you count men and women's basketball as separate sports. But I was able in February of this 2020 to commentate four softball games with Dean Chad Joyce as the color commentator, actually. And then that was the first NCAA softball games I had ever done the play by play for. And then rewind to September of 2019, and I commentated my first ever NCAA games. And I commentated in one weekend 7 NCAA volleyball games for a Harding tournament, and that was 5 in one day, 2 on the other as color commentator. And so that was kind of me breaking the waters. And then in between those was November of 2019. I commentated back to back a men and a women's NCAA basketball game for this Big Red Classic tournament, which you being on the basketball team some of these years at Harding, I guess would have been a part of that tournament. So that was really fun. So those are kind of that's a long-winded answer of what all I've done, but it's really been fun to kind of test the waters and everything. And I haven't even mentioned that I've directed a football game or two. I've done some camera work, which behind the scenes is not my forte, but it's been fun to kind of see how that goes.
Yeah. So all of those things are such different versions of storytelling, whether it's using a camera or it's radio where there's no picture to go with it, or if it's podcasting, or if it's just a nat sound piece with no other words. So how do you work with the different various forms of storytelling, and what are the different challenges that come with the different ways to do it?
Yeah, I think with radio and stuff, I learned that, you have to talk to someone like they are individually, it's just you and them. Because I think when I started out, I talked more generally like to an audience. But then I think I've learned that when you're on the radio, the person in their car is just thinking they're having this conversation with you in a sense. Maybe they're not talking back, but you're talking to them as an individual. And even when you give a big speech or you're on camera, like they always tell us in the TV, is simplify things and act like you're saying this to your grandmother. And so that's like something I've taken with me is keep it simple, act like you're talking to an individual. And so making things more like that. But then also, I think with camera work and television stuff, there's that opportunity through the lens of the camera to get places other people may not be able to go. And so trying to think of things that, maybe these people would be interested in seeing how this works, like behind the scenes of these two sibling managers, Reed and Lane Pace. I did a story on them. And managers are the people often overlooked in the sports world. And so, what does their job look like? What do they do as their job? I know they're not on the court getting the fame, but what is their behind the scenes? So taking the camera, going in the locker room, the laundry room, stuff like that's been cool. And then my favorite story I think I kind of have two, but I was able on a Monday night my sophomore year I drove to Memphis 2 hours and shot footage of these two Harding cheerleaders. Their mother and grandmother back in their days at Harding were cheerleaders. And I'm talking 1959, 1990. These two siblings, so Carson and Ellie Arnett, who at the time when I was a sophomore, Carson was a sophomore and Ellie was a senior. And I figured out they had a mother and grandmother who both were Harding cheerleaders, third generation, they're sibling cheerleaders. So I was able to drive to Memphis, go to where they grew up, interview the mother and grandmother. And that was actually the first package I ever recorded. And when I look back, the audio was terrible. The footage was not so great. I didn't have nat sound. And some of those things that kind of drive me crazy. But the story was fun. And I think that's something that, you're never going to get everything perfect. But being able to tell stories, and that one, has 700 views on my YouTube channel. And I think it's something that those people in that family now forever can go back and have that special moment of those three generations in that one family. Let's say they have Thanksgiving or something, they can watch that video that I don't really have a super strong connection to them, but they can kind of bond over. I kind of told a story that was not otherwise told if it wasn't for being on the media. So that's been fun. And then the other story I was going to mention was international athletes are often on the campus of Harding, which is so unique to me because Harding is kind of a tucked away small town in Arkansas. You have people that are from Croatia, from England, from Russia, from South America, you name it. We have these people come play sports at Harding. And so I did a package on international athletes and I titled it A Home Away from Home, and how they all may be from different places, but just they're united in the fact that everyone's a Harding Bison when they put on that uniform. And so I interviewed a tennis player from Russia, a basketball player from Croatia, a soccer player from London, England, and then I had a cross country runner who was from Madrid, Spain. So I kind of touched on a lot of different countries. And so that was really fun to kind of bring together those people from out of the country for one video. And so that's been fun to kind of work with a variety of people and tell different stories.
Yeah, that's hilarious that you said about the Arnett's because I remember as a freshman, that was the first package that I had seen done by somebody at Harding. And I remember thinking that it was amazing. I remember telling Mr. Tim, I said, that was good. I don't think I could do that, but that was really good.
Oh, you're too kind. Yeah, see, I was not thinking it was too hot. So.
Oh, that's funny. Well, I'm sitting here looking at your room back there. You got Titans jerseys, Titans sign, got the Preds things up. Obviously, a big Nashville sports fan. So I've been asking everyone that's come on here the $1 million question of can you be a fan while you're still doing your job? So for you, I want to put a different spin on it and ask is covering a sports team in Nashville something that you're interested in, or do you want to go away from that so that you can still be a fan?
Haley Kate, that is a question I was asking Kyle Deckelbaum in Little Rock. I kind of still wrestle with that because I'm just wondering, will it lose the magic when you start to work for some team? Because to put in perspective, I think winter break, my sophomore year, I worked security at Bridgestone Arena in Nashville, where the Nashville Predators hockey team plays. It's one of those where it was still fun to watch it, but I almost started seeing the games more from the business and like working side of things instead of the fans' perspective. So that was something where it ended up not losing the magic once I stopped, but kind of in the middle of it, you're like, will it lose? So I think I'm fearful it might, but that's not stopping me from pursuing a job. I'm right now if I had to pick a job, I mean, I'd love to work for the Nashville Predators, Tennessee Titans, Nashville Sounds. I mean, you name it in the Nashville area. There's a high chance that I'd like to stay there. I mean, that's the city that I love. I've grown up in, and I would not mind being there for a little while longer. So, I think to answer your question, I do fear that that could go away, but it's not going to stop me from pursuing a job in the Nashville area because I think that's just where my knowledge base is, where my connections are, and where my passion is.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to run off on a tangent here. You're talking about studying abroad. I don't know much, but I know that you wore a Preds jersey all over the place abroad. So can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, so okay, so the Preds in the spring are kind of on the back end of their season. And if you kind of look at the timeline, 2017, my senior year of high school, they make it to the Stanley Cup final, which is the final round of the NHL playoffs. And so they lost it that year. Next year, they won the regular season award for like the highest winning percentage. Really great season. They lost in the second round right before the conference finals. So they were kind of just close enough. And then 2019, I go abroad. Preds are still having a pretty good season. So I wanted to bring my jersey to kind of bring some good luck to the team because if they made the playoffs, which they did, I knew I would be in Europe for that. And I was kind of like wanted to bring some good team spirit with me. So I made it my goal to wear the Preds jersey in every single country I went to. I think I made it to 9 countries and I wore the Preds jersey in 8 of them. And then in the ninth country, which was Spain, it was a little warmer there. So I actually had like a Stanley Cup Preds shirt. So I wore some kind of Preds thing. And I actually like sent a photo on Twitter in the Preds first playoff series, game number 1 or 2. I got put on Fox Sports with the picture from Spain wearing my Preds thing. And then I actually tweeted another thing and it kind of got picked up. And I did like a kind of collage of the pictures from all 9 countries. So that was fun. And I actually had 1 or 2 people when I was in Europe. Like one guy went to Vanderbilt University and we were in Germany. And he was like, "Oh, hey, are you from Nashville?" And so it's kind of fun. In the one funny story to tell you about that. So in Paris, France, and really in Europe in general, people wear black and dark clothing. And I didn't really pick that up. And so I'm wearing this gold sweater looking like a goon college student from America just standing out just like a neon sign or something. And so I'm wearing this gold jersey and like there's this super crowded train and I'm just in the middle of this packed group wearing this Preds gold jersey, had 2 backpacks on front and back and just felt like a sore thumb. So that's one of the things I when I would wear it, I would stand out just completely. So my group liked it that they could find me. However, sometimes I'd feel a little awkward, like in a sea of people wearing dark clothing. So that was
No,
fun.
that's so fun though. You're probably the only Preds fan that's ever worn a jersey all across the world.
Yeah, that was tons of fun. And the Preds ended up losing that series, the first round series, but I would stay up until so it was 7 hours ahead in Italy where we were staying. And so the Preds would have a game sometimes start at 8:30 p.m. Central Time, which would be starting at 3:30 a.m. where I was in Italy. And I would sleep for maybe like 2 hours, wake up, watch the entire game until like 6:30 a.m., go back to sleep for an hour, and then go to class. And I did that for basically every game the Preds had. I would stay up if it started at 1 a.m. or 3 a.m. and watch it through the night. So that was kind of fun, but also lacked a lot of sleep there at the end.
Yeah, that is some dedication. Okay, I want to talk about your podcast now, the Sports Tea with JD. They started this year. So just tell me how you got that started, what was the motivation behind that, and how it's going.
Yeah, so it's funny. So right now, the day we're recording this November 12th. So if you rewind 7 months to this exact day, April 12th, I recorded my first ever episode of the podcast. So that was kind of crazy. It's like it's been 7 months, but I was doing a little uh, compilation video actually just the other day, putting together all my podcasts. And Haley Kate was on season 2, episode 8, I believe, which was maybe the 18th episode I did, which is kind of just fun that you're on the podcast I did. But I've had 26 episodes. I think I counted about 32 different guests, and it's been about 1645, like just over 1,600 views, and it's posted on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Anchor. But I think the reason I started it was, I mean, everything got canceled, sports were on the back burner, and you're a huge sports fan, Haley Kate, so I know you can relate to this. But as someone who really is passionate about sports, I mean, I felt like just a piece of me was missing. Something was just like lacking. And so I kind of started the podcast to give people kind of a refill of sports, as you might say, is the sports tea kind of plays off of that. Like, if you want your cup filled with sports and it's dry right now, I'm here to kind of fill it up for you, give you a little sports tea, and then just kind of I went from there and recorded. I think I recorded about 10 episodes from April 12th to July 1st. Took about a month off, revamped it, did a second season from about mid July range, maybe it was actually June 1st, April 12th to June 1st. And then July 5th, I restarted it, did a second season. And now I'm on the third season and I'm about 2 episodes into that. So it's been fun. I've had Arkansas people. I've talked Razorbacks. I've kind of hopped on the Razorback bandwagon because, I mean, being in Arkansas 4 years, there are people in Arkansas that take college football passion to the next level because there's no pro sports team, which I am just unfamiliar with being in a town of 3 pro sports teams. You got the Memphis Grizzlies over in Memphis. You got Tennessee. You got Vanderbilt, Memphis, Chattanooga. I mean, you got a lot of variety, but the Hogs really take over the state of Arkansas. So that's been fun to talk some Razorbacks. I've gotten to talk Tennessee Titans with the voice of the Titans who does play-by-play on the radio. I've done podcast with 3 different guys with the Nashville Predators. One of them is a podcast host for their official podcast. One of them's their television commentator, and the other is their radio commentator. So it's been fun to have a mixture of kind of the Nashville scene, the Arkansas scene, and then the Harding scene even has been something where, I mean, we did a podcast. I've done a podcast with maybe 2 or 3, 4 other Harding students. So that's been fun to kind of just take my life, my areas I've lived in, and just kind of make it my own and kind of spread it out to both audiences.
Yeah, okay. So this is random, but for me, on my recalling those hogs, I talked to a lot of Razorback athletes that I grew up watching and that I grew up a fan of. So for you with your podcast, was there anyone that you featured that you grew up listening to or listening to them commentate and it was almost like you were a fan?
Oh man, yeah. So like big time on the 5th and 6th episodes. It was kind of crazy because it started on April. And I mean, I just created a name, interviewed my uncle, who is the athletic director, or who is the athletic director at Lipscomb. So he kind of helped me start it because he played basketball at Lipscomb in the late 80s and he was a star player. He's well known in Nashville. So having him kind of boosted my kind of clout, so to say, because we don't share a last name. So people may not have put together that we were related. And so that kind of helped out. So we did that the first episode. And then the third episode was with the head coach of Vanderbilt Baseball, who, I mean, last season in the NCAA, they won the national, or yeah, they won the 2019 national championship or something. So, I mean, he was coming off a national title. It may not have been, yeah, I don't think the 2020 season got to finish. And that's what we talked about is, they were about to get started and it just never really happened. So I was a little starstruck from him, not necessarily because I grew up a huge Vanderbilt baseball fan, but more just because I knew he was an SEC head coach, which is just something I was not expecting to have on my third episode. And then the big one, like you mentioned, episode 5 and 6 were the voice back to back of my 2 favorite teams, who are both the radio guys who I've grown up listening to. They've both been with the team since the beginning in Nashville. You got 1998, 97, the Preds started around then, and then 1988, 89. you had Mike Keith, the voice of the Tennessee Titans. And so he was on the fifth episode. Pete Weber for the Nashville Predators was on the sixth. And it was so crazy because I do the Zoom call, start it up, and their voice, like, kind of gives me chills when they are talking to me because I see their face and their voice is like the voice I've grown up every time in the radio listening to and idolizing and wanting to be like them. And then the fact that the first season, I mean, less than a month into my podcast, I'm interviewing them for half an hour, 45 minutes to an hour. I mean, was really crazy in the moment. And I had to kind of calm myself beforehand and just be like, do your thing, do your interview, don't let it get kind of in your head. And they were both super kind, generous, and those had to be made my favorite just because those dudes were really awesome. And then the only other one was season two, episode one, Willie Donick, who's the television play by play for the Nashville Predators. He's kind of my generation's Nashville sports radio guy. And so he was also in that trio of people that I was a little bit starstruck by, but they were very kind to give me their time.
Yeah. What do you think the biggest thing that you've learned from anything, but maybe specifically your podcast journey has been?
Yeah, I think just being kind of not afraid to reach out to people and realizing that everyone's a human and people are willing to help people out who are in college age positions and that people are more friendly than you may give credit to. And that's kind of one thing is at first I was a little nervous, like, oh, I don't know if I should reach out to these people, but also that just using connections, I mean, that is something huge. But then kind of the main takeaway in terms of the interviews and stuff like that is I interned with the guy who is my fourth episode, George Plaster. He's a Nashville sports radio host, and he let me intern for him this summer. And he taught me this big lesson, which is be a great listener. And I think the first couple episodes, I was so worried about, all right, here's all the questions I have. I want to do it in this, and this order. But if I were to say something just completely out of left field right now, and like the person doing the interview, so you right now, like weren't really listening, that could be like a huge miss for you because it's like they gave you some great piece of information, but you didn't roll with it. And so learning that, I may have like a couple things I want to say, but let's say all of a sudden the person gives me something really good, like that I didn't know about, listening well enough to ask them about it, kind of be like, hey, can you tell me more about what you just said? And so I think listening first and then having my kind of agenda second has been really important. And I think being a good listener makes a great interviewer.
I love that. That's good. That's good. A good lesson learned. Okay, you
Yeah.
touched on this a little bit earlier when I was asking about can you be a fan, but I just want to go back to it and elaborate on it. What is the dream job for you?
Oh, hey, Kate, these are good questions. I wish I had some set answer, but I think Al Michaels for NBC commentating Sunday Night Football. He's done the Miracle on Ice back in 1980. He's commentated World Series and Super Bowls, and I mean, he has done it all. He's someone that I think I would love to have his job on like a major network commentating the major games. However, I think more realistically, if I want to have a family and like be invested if I end up like being married and like not totally like abandoning my family and stuff. Because I mean, one thing is the calm lifestyle is very on the move, on the go, random hours, could be working late night. And so, I mean, yes, you could have a family with it, but there are going to be challenges. So if I maybe could pick a more realistic like job dream or something, I would say maybe being like the voice of the Tennessee Titans or the voice of the Nashville Predators. These guys that I've grown up watching and listening to. I mean, if I was getting paid to talk about the Tennessee Titans or the Nashville Predators, I would not be having a bad life. So I think that would probably be up there for me. But then also, third would be hosting my own radio show, whether that's Ryan Seacrest esque doing like top 40, or whether that's kind of like a Colin Coward or something like that, doing a kind of more sports scene. So those are three things on my mind, and those are all kind of different. You got radio, you got play by play locally, and then you got play by play nationally. But I'd be lying if I didn't want to do what the big dogs are doing at NBC and stuff.
Yes. Well, graduation's coming around the corner for you. Is the sports tee with JD something you're going to keep going after your graduation?
Yeah, it's something that I'm gonna be honest, if I'm trying to make money and be living and paying rent, I'm probably not gonna be doing the podcast unless like I just really had some big sponsor come on. Because I mean, I probably get a cent and a half per listen on like Apple Podcast, Spotify. I think I've made like 5.5 bucks in like 7 months. So I'm making less than $1 a month on my podcast. So I don't know how hot that would be, but I think I'll do it kind of if time allows. But I would love for the podcast to then in turn get me a job that I could kind of be more on a larger scene. And if that happens, I'll probably kind of slowly wind down the podcast. But if ever a time comes and someone wants to be interviewed, it's kind of more something that I might do for fun and then still have like a professional job. So that could be something that I'll kind of see what happens, but I wouldn't hate if it kept going, but also wouldn't mind if I got paid a little more money and had to put it to the back burner.
Yes, yes, definitely. Okay, well, before I let you go, I just kind of want to bring it back around to Harding and your experience here and just ask you if you were talking to a senior in high school or a freshman in college who was looking at this career path and looking at Harding, what is one piece of advice that you would give to them?
I would tell them to not be afraid of anything, try out for everything, and get involved in as much as possible because really, I think because I've done a lot, I've figured out, maybe I don't want to do this thing. And it's not bad that I did it because it let me know that I didn't want to do in the future. And, camera shooting, I've learned is not my forte, not my top skill. And so that's something that, I tried it, but I might not want to be some professional camera equipment operator or a team, but it's because I learned that lesson because I tried. So I think putting your foot in every door, really connecting with professors and really trying everything ranging from the sports network, the HU16, the KVHU. And I kind of wish if I could turn back time, I would have tried at least a semester of writing for the Bison newspaper because that's something that I think is really going to be helpful for the future if you do have writing and on camera. And I feel like I have just done on camera. So that's something that I might, if I could turn back the clock, try to do that. So, any freshmen or potential freshmen listening, don't be afraid that you're a freshman. We got freshmen doing the HU16 live at 5 just as much as I'm a senior doing the live at 5. So, that's something that everyone should get involved.
Yeah. Well, Jackson, I could talk all day about sports and Harding and all the great things in both of those areas, but I'll let you go. Thank you so much for joining me. I can't wait to see where life takes you after graduation. Maybe someday I'll be listening to you on ESPN. Thanks again for joining me.
Thanks, AK. Yeah, and I think it wouldn't be shocking to me if you ended up being next to me in the booth there at ESPN. So,
Yeah, we'll have a Duncan to Webb toss on ESPN.
and I love that. Thanks for having me, Haley Kate.
Thank you.